My name is Rehema Barber. I am the Chief Curator of the Kalamazoo Institute of Arts. I want to thank you so much for joining us this evening. We are so pleased to have you with us. It's been my pleasure to become acquainted with Mr. Todd Gray during these almost 2 years that we have worked together to bring his work here to Kalamazoo and develop this exhibition. But before I introduce our guest of honor, I'd like to thank our sponsors for tonight's program and the exhibition, Todd Gray, Crossing the Waters of Space, Time, and History. The Andrew W. Mellon Foundation, the National Endowment for the Humanities, and the Michigan Council for Arts and Cultural Affairs. This program is just one example of how the KIA continues to move toward achieving more toward our vision that the arts are for everyone. I know we're excited to begin tonight's conversation, but I have a few reminders. As time allows, we will be taking questions, and so please use the cards that were provided, and then a KIA staff person will collect them once we open the floor for questions. For those of you who purchased books, we will give you time after tonight's program to have them signed. And for those of you who would like a book, they should be available in our gallery shop during normal hours. Finally, I'd like to remind everyone to silence your cell phones as this program is being recorded and live streamed. And that includes myself. All right, without further ado, please allow me to introduce Todd Gray. Todd Gray has performed at institutions such as the Roy and Edna Disney Cow Arts Theater in Los Angeles, the Hammer Museum, Los Angeles, and he was the recipient of a John Simon Guggenheim Fellowship in 2018 and a Rockefeller Foundation Bellagio Residency Fellowship in 2016, among others. Among the many notable private and public collections in which the artist's work is included are the John Paul Getty Museum, the Whitney Museum of American Art, the Los Angeles County Museum of Art, the National Gallery of Canada in Ottawa, the Studio Museum in Harlem, the Museum of Contemporary Art Los Angeles, and the Minneapolis Museum of Art, among others. Todd Gray is represented by David Lewis, New York. Please join me in giving Mr. Gray our very own special Kalamazoo welcome. So, good evening, Todd.
Hi, and thank you for coming. It's great to be here.
Thank you for being here. My first question for you is really about how you got started. I'm really struck by your ability to create these dynamic visual narratives, whether they're through the physical bodies of people are present or not. So, can you tell us a little bit about how you got started?
Yes, but I feel I probably neglected the proper thanks to yourself, the director, the staff here, and then all of you good folks who pay your taxes to allow this to happen. And if there's anyone who's donated, donate more. Donate much more. Culture helps. Culture helps. Okay?
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
Let's see. The work that we may talk about, I started when I picked up a camera when I was 12 years old, and I just became smitten. And then in high school, which is really important, I took a photography course. And but by that time, I joined up with another photographer, Neil Zlozower, who I used to go to concerts with. And so really what pulled me into photography was music. I mean, I took my camera to see tons and tons and tons of groups until finally, while still in high school, I shot my first album cover, Cannonball Adderley Live at the Troubadour, with Neil Zlozower. It's called Cannonball Adderley, the Black Messiah. And that's when I was 17. And then, of course, when I went on the Exile on Main Street tour, my parents had to sign a waiver that I could go on tour with the Stones.
Okay, so what you haven't said is that you have been around the likes of Led Zeppelin, The Doors, of course, he just mentioned the Rolling Stones, and then you go on and you photograph Stevie Wonder, Gladys Knight, Michael Jackson, all these other people. So you've got to tell us a little bit about how that happened, like what that energy was like.
Well, at 16, I could not play guitar. But I wanted to be I wanted to be on stage. And I saw that, oh my God, and the photographers, they're right at the bottom of the stage. So that's about as close as I could get. And and also free tickets because the photographer gets a photo pass. So my motives were very selfish. I wanted to be as close to the stage and not pay a dime. Then my friend, Neil Zlozower, and we were GZ Photography, Gray Zlozower Photography, while we were still in high school, started taking some of the photos to the local rock magazines. And then within a year's time, we were being reproduced, our images, in Melody Maker in London, music magazines in Japan, in Australia. We were just sending packets out. And we thought, wow, not only do we do this, we get paid. And that's when my parents were very supportive. Like, they said, oh, you're a young entrepreneur. How fantastic.
That is really fantastic. So what is, like, you've got to tell me, like, what that energy was like to sort of be around these people that we can only imagine, really.
Well, you see, you have to transport yourself back to the late 60s, early 70s, and rock and roll was revolutionary. I only listened to rock and roll. I only embraced rock and roll. My father embraced jazz and the blues. And so, of course, I didn't listen to that at all. And I didn't know until fast forward 30 or 40 years later that it was because I had low self-esteem, because I thought being Black was the signature of being less than, was being inferior. So I did not listen to the R&B station that was in Los Angeles, KGFJ. I only listened to the pop and rock stations because I identified with whiteness. And I thought that was a richer culture, and that was the real culture, because I thought that my culture, Black culture, was less than. So when I got into it, like the Rolling Stones, for example, I liked the Rolling Stones. So every Wednesday when I got home from high school, I called the manager of the Rolling Stones. He never picked up the phone. But after 3 months, it was going to an answering service, no machines. And he goes, you were costing me money. I've got all these. Who the hell are you? And hello, Mr. Chess. My name's Todd Gray, and I'm a rock and roll photographer with Neil Zlozower, and we want to shoot the Rolling Stones. And obviously, he was amused, like, who has this kind of gumption? So he said, come to my office at noon, knowing we'd have to ditch school. And so we showed up, and we brought our photographs of Chuck Berry, Keith Richards, Eric Clapton, that we had photographed at nightclubs, like Whiskey A Go-Go. And his father was the head of Chess Records. His name was Marshall Chess, and that was Chuck Berry's album, Chuck Berry's record label. As soon as he saw that Chuck Berry picture, he goes, wow, you can make Chuck look this good, Rolling Stones, whatever you want. Where do you want to go? What do you want to do? And we said, well, from San Francisco to San Diego, we'd like to shoot. And so we were there, and I met this guy who had this movie camera, and I thought, who is this guy? And now fast forward to undergrad at Cal Arts in '78. So 6 years after I was traveling on the Exile on Main Street. And my photo teacher's showing this book called The Americans by this guy named Robert Frank. And that was the Robert Frank, who's just the titan of photography. And I met, tons of people. But
You mentioned something that I'm going to pull on a little bit as far as your embracing of rock and roll versus jazz. And you talk about this because you write about it. You talk
Uh,
about mental colonialism and the right attitude and normativity. And so can we talk about that a little bit?
sure. Um, I think, but I'm going to segue, and you may have to remind me, because this makes me think of an argument I got into with Robert Plant at the Continental Hyatt House Hotel in Hollywood. Robert, I had snuck George Harrison's ex-wife, or was it his? In any event, I um, I got I mean, it was purely friendship. As you can imagine, 16-year-old with a 27-year-old. But in any event, I was in the party at the Hyatt House, and Robert Plant and I were talking, and he was saying how great black music is. And he goes, Led Zeppelin is just a blues band, and all we do is play the blues, Mississippi Delta blues, loud and fast. That's all we do. And I said, blues? I said, that's the crap my father listens to. You're great. You're not a blues band. You're great. And he goes, no, man, the blues, black music is the best. And so here's this white Brit talking to this young black person, and we're at complete opposite ends of the scale. But I had no idea that I was speaking from the position of mental colonialism. And that comes from Frantz Fanon, Wretched of the Earth, where the coin is termed part of the colonialist paradigm or plan is you go and you colonize an area and you show that, hey, look, we have superior technology, superior arms, so a superior God called Jesus. So obviously we're the superior people because look, we've subdued you. And then you make those people feel so inferior and self-conscious that they internalize that. And that's called mental colonialism. So did that answer your, or did it?
You did. I mean, so when you think about that in relationship to your work, you know, because we do. Have you seen that we're crossing the space time in history in this conversation? We're going back and forth, and this is exactly what your work does. It talks to the past, the present, and the future. So let's talk about how that intersects in the work. Can we? Because
Yeah.
we see it in the work here too, on view.
Oh, yeah. The past, the collapsing of time is really important. And I must say that I became conscious of the extent to which my brain had been brainwashed through majority culture, you know, and I call that brainwashing the mental colonialism. But that came as a result of going to grad school in 1987 to 89 when I studied with Alan Sekula at CalArts. And Alan Sekula turned me on to lots of books, bell hooks, Skip Gates, Toni Morrison, Frantz Fanon, just a whole big reading list. And now I've lost track of your question.
We were talking about how it intersects with your work.
Yeah, so
Yes.
all of that, then I saw, I was able to take a step back and see, oh, wait a second. I have to think historically the work that I'm making, where it fits in this timeline of history, because the mechanisms that have entered into my consciousness and made me, given me this inferiority complex have been in place for centuries. And so that's when I thought, wow, I need to make images of the past and hopefully see how they intersect with the present. That's why those gardens are really classic, because the gardens, imperial gardens, were a way to display wealth and power for centuries. You know, the way to show the, do you guys remember the image of the there, as soon as you go in, there's a person of privilege, a sculpture of a person of privilege sitting on the back of a peasant holding a cornucopia. And then you can see the peasant just drop anything that's dropped, they're throwing it in their mouths. That's on the entry gate to Versailles. And so back then, I don't know how many hundreds of years that sculpture is there, they were very clear about the position of power, and that everyone, if you're not a royal, if you're not the 1%, then you're just sort of nothing. So that's why it was important for me to see that these power dynamics, which is called hegemony, you know, just all-encompassing power, has been in existence for centuries. And I wanted to make those points. And hopefully seeing an image like that sort of just shows you how elites and non-elites, what the power dynamic is.
Right. I mean, oh. Okay, now I'm back. No, that leads to the question that we've been talking about as far as sculpture today, as far as public monuments today, right? And how there's this big shift now to get rid of monuments or address them, speak to them. And so in a lot of ways, your work does that, right? It's speaking to the monuments.
Hopefully it's a critique.
Yes.
Hopefully, I mean, I try to make really beautiful work. I try to make work that my mother can come to and look at and go, oh, that's nice. Because I want to disarm the viewer. I don't want to use the word seduce, attract. I want to attract the viewer to look at the piece because I'm using the trope of beauty. And we've all been trained to recognize beauty. And so I like to use this tool, this thing called beauty, to get you to look. And then something that's discordant, something that's out of place. And that's where the African landscape, the portrait, or covering something up. That's a great technique that I use. Photography is supposed to tell you something, reveal something. I use photography to obfuscate. I use photography to cover things up because I want the viewer to be cognizant that although we think there is a veracity, a truth-telling to photography, that is all made by us. When we look at it, we actually project the meaning onto the photograph. So it depends on the viewer's position. So my work requires a lot of work from the viewers.
So, I mean, we would call that, you're asking the viewer to go on the journey with you, right?
Right, absolutely.
Right. So I'm thinking about
Of space, time, and history.
Exactly. We're weaving that, and so it's let's think about can we go to the people that may or may not be represented in the work, right? So in some of the works on view here, we definitely see people represented. And so I was really interested in the juxtaposition of people in place. Like, is there some significance to that too? Like some of the people that you have represented, like physical people, and the places, the juxtaposition?
Well, in the sketches that I show, that's one thing. There's a vitrine with sketches of early work where the project that I use my archive of Michael Jackson, I was his personal photographer from 79 to 83. And so I use and I'm the last photographer that owns his copyright. So I could legally show those photographs. In any event, I did a work which positioned Michael as an African diasporic subject. So that's what the emphasis of that work was about. And I wanted to show that, those what I call sketches, basically images that I collage in Photoshop digitally. And that's to show you my work process and to show you what came before and how I made the jump after I finished the MJ project, which was called Exquisite Terribleness. I jumped into the work that you're seeing now because I had received a Guggenheim for that, and still talking about African diasporic individuals. So in that way, it's very specific that I'm using an image of MJ in relationship to whatever photograph it's with. In the newer work, it's really more in the moment. I am more, I just recognize, oh, this person would work, or this form would work well here. So to answer your question, it wasn't specific. It came about through the process of making the work. I discovered a subject to use.
Okay, so you brought MJ into the room, so I get to ask a little question.
Oh, I stepped in it, yeah.
Okay. You're so amenable. I appreciate that. When I was thinking about your images of MJ, you have a beautiful essay that we actually have in our library. If for any of you that have seen the show, you see that there are books in the show, but there are also more readings that you can you have access to in the library. You write about your time photographing Michael and the people. And I was struck by this idea that there were these machinations behind the scenes to, um, as far as his masculinity.
Right.
Can you talk about that a
Sure.
little bit?
I'm just trying. Oh, I can give you I'm just trying to see what version I can give you, because I want to give you the little longer, the contextual one. All right. Because everyone wants to know, how did you get this job to shoot Michael Jackson? Well, I was right out of art school, and I was hired to shoot Gladys Knight from the record company. Gladys Knight's management also managed the Jacksons. So they saw that I was a young photographer and I did a good job. So they slowly put me to shoot like a PR photographer, just when they would get a gold record ceremony backstage at Soul Train or American Bandstand. So that's it. On these occasions, I never spoke to Michael. I only spoke to his brothers. So then I went to shoot a concert, and Michael comes up to me the very first time he ever spoke to me and goes, "Todd, do you like me?" And my engine's running so fast because this is Hollywood. And what is this multimillionaire asking me if I like him? What's this about? And so I buy time and I just say, "Why do you ask me, Michael? I mean, this is the first time we're talking." He goes, "That's what I mean. You talk to my brothers, but you never talk to me." And I saw, I said, "I don't talk to you because you're busy, and I know my place. I'm just a press photographer. I'm staying back." And he goes, "Are you sure it's not because you don't like me?" I said, "Michael, I don't even know you. How can I not like you?" And then I get a call to go to Disneyland the next week with Michael. And I'm going, okay. Because he was taping the 50th or 30th anniversary with Danny Kaye. So I go there and I shoot while he's singing and so forth. Then it's lunch break and Michael goes, "I want to hit some rides. Let's go hit some rides." So I grab my camera and he goes, "No, leave your camera." And I go, "Okay." And then I knew how you women felt. Because I'm thinking, what if he tries to jump on me on the Matterhorn? That was my first thought. And I thought, oh, women, I feel you. Because then how am I going to keep him as a client if that happens? And I'm running through all these possibilities because I don't know I have no idea what he's about. But I'm in my 20s. I've lived in Hollywood. Enough said. So then all we did was do rides, and I connected to my inner 14-year-old. And I was screaming, and he was cool. He was just like, "Hey, let's have fun. Great." Blah, blah, blah. I shoot. 3 days later, I get a call from the manager. "Todd, what happened with you and MJ in Disneyland?" I go, "Are the photos okay?" He goes, "This isn't about the photos. What happened? What'd you guys talk about?" I go, we did the rides." "Oh, I know what it is. I don't have any photos of him on the rides. Michael told me not to grab." He says, "This is not about the photographs." I said, "I absolutely don't know what you're talking about." He says, "I got a call from Michael. He said, from now on, only hire Todd to photograph me." And I thought, once again, he's going to take the long, slow road, And then I will get to the masculinity part, don't worry. Oh, you're waiting.
I'm waiting.
Okay, here I am. Look at this. So basically, he said, "I like Todd because he doesn't talk much." And also, he's the one that reached out because I didn't go towards him. He reached out to got me. And then all this time, as I photographed him on another Disneyland, I mean, I've been to Disneyland, Disney World with him, several times. That's when I was approached by management to photograph Michael and make him look masculine as I can. And it was two reasons. One, because the press was starting to wonder, what's up with him? Why isn't he like his brothers? Where's the girls? What's happening? The other, CBS Records, because they were with Epic Records, it was time for their quarter. And they wanted to dispel any notion of gender identity conflict because that would hurt sales. And so I said, how the heck am I going to do this? Because I can't tell, like, man up, beef up, I can. So I would just tell him, I would hit him in direct sun, so he'd squint his eyes because of that. And then I'd say, hey, come on, look mean, growl or stuff, but it would be a very playful thing, and so forth. But this was the uncertainty and what I would call the problem of normativity.
Yes.
The problem of normativity. Normal, what is to be normal? To be normal is to be hetero, to be, all of these clack to have this sort of the values for material gain and so forth, and to be hyper masculine and all this stuff, what I call toxic masculinity. And I am a proponent of anti-normativity because we're all individual and we don't fit into this this normal mode. So I am also what is called a pluralist. I don't think there's black or white. I don't think that in binaries. I think there's multiplicities and pluralities. And that's where I operate from. And that's hopefully what comes up in the work that you see. So there's really no definition, one way to talk about my work. There's multiple ways. And hopefully when you are talking about the work, you are realizing that that's your view. So long way to get to the answer to your question.
It was great. I'm there. I'm there with you because you steered it right back to the work that's on view here. And our audience doesn't know this, but some of the works came from a show called Euclidean, Todd Gray, Euclidean grigri. And I think we have to explain Euclidean a little bit in the context of your work. And then, of course, we have to say, what is grigri?
Yeah.
Okay. What do you think?
I'll do the Euclidean, you do the grigri.
Oh, I've got that.
Okay. Well, Euclid, geometric, geometry, Euclidean geometry, and so forth. What we fail to realize is that all the great scholars of Greece, ancient Greece, went to Egypt for higher learning. This is not me as an Afrofuturist. This is documented all over the place. Euclid studied in Egypt, which is in Africa. So this Euclidean, for me, is geometry, how everything's rational. There's right angle. Rational problem solving solves everything. Well, our rationality created Hiroshima. And we can use rational argument, any lawyer in here, you can use rational argument to argue anything. So it's very plastic. And so I saw the limits of what I call head, neck up thinking, where we're only thinking here, and ignoring the body. And so that's where the grigri comes in.
Oh, wow. No, I have this, I think, because when I think about the grigri, it's the spirit, it's the body, it's the soul, right? It's the thing that you connect deeply with.
Yes.
And it's the thing that makes you think about your ancestors, right? It makes you think about your future too, right? It's that elasticity that you just talked about. But it's not in the sort of Western perspective, right? Because we like to deal with this, you think about Euclidean, it's a very straightforward, linear.
Right.
The timeline, right? You don't get to go back forward and around, right? But I think one of the things that you see in your images too are how you weave that. You weave the people in, and then you weave the Euclidean in. You weave the soul and the spirit together, right? And also the rational. They can't necessarily be divorced, I think, is what maybe part of the point.
Well, I like to think that I have integrated head and body because I think most of us in here are operating neck up 24/7. And we need to acknowledge, like when we have impulses, intuitions, we need to be sensitive to that because we're a complete whole human. But, and hence the indigenous folks that actually, whose land we're on right now, really communed with nature and really the cycles of nature and so forth. And nature wasn't an abstract that one created in one's head. And African cultures, there's so many of them, but there's many similarities. So but of course, all of my training, I was a professor for 20 years of photography at Cal State University, Long Beach, done an immense amount, well, for me, it's an immense amount of reading. Maybe for you, it's just a normal amount of reading. But I just relied neck up. And what happened, if I may, is I lost my love of photography at some point because I was working as a conceptual artist all the time, just working up here. Until at one point I said, damn, I want to rediscover the joy of making pictures. And that's when I decided I'm going to work impulsively. I'm going to work like a jazz musician, improvisationally. When I feel like, oh, that's interesting, I'm not going to think, well, what does that signify? Where's the semiotic of that? What might be implied? Because before I go like this, I run the whole gamut of questions before I go click. And I will not go click unless I have an answer to all those questions. And so it was exhausting taking pictures. Just questioning everything. What's my motive here? What am I implying that I may not be aware of? How the hell do I know what I'm playing, what I'm not aware of? I'm not aware. So afterwards, I decided I'd use a post-conceptual critique. So I don't question, I just go with my camera, I shoot. When I get back to the studio, that's when I bring all of that rigor, all of that intellectual rigor, all of that conceptual rigor to interrogate the image, to make sure I understand what it is, and then position it with something else. And hopefully by that positioning, you all actually have an experience that's outside of the normal experience of looking at a photograph. Because right off the bat, I'm not making a photograph two-dimensional, I'm making it three-dimensional. And right off the bat, I'm not using the photograph to tell you something. I'm using the photograph to obscure information and putting the onus on you. What is behind that? What's being said? So I'm using that as a trigger to engage you and so forth. And that all comes from Stuart Hall.
And then thinking about the scale of the work too, right? It deliberately is about the body.
Yes.
So I think that's the thing too, that is so immensely important about the work, is that without necessarily saying here's the body, think about your body, right? You're making those associations. Hopefully people are getting that.
Well, what's happening also is the idea of how classic oil painting works. Because I looked at a lot of oil painting. And I saw when you look at a masterwork of a certain size, you're transported into that scene. And that's what the painter wants. He wants to pull you out and into that scene. And of course, what do we do it now with the cinema, the huge screen where we have these out-of-body experiences. So I know that's when I realized I need to ramp my scale up similar to the size of oil painting. So when the viewer looks at it, they can easily slide into that scene and then look at it from that position. And I saw a show of Julie Mehetru.
She went to K College here, Kalamazoo College.
I saw her show at LA County Museum, and I was in New York, and I saw it again at the Whitney. And when I saw it in 2019 in LA, it's so huge. I mean, her pieces it could be as big as this wall. And I was just bowled over by it. And that's when I realized I need to ramp up my scale because I want to have that operatic, that cinematic impact. So my show that I just had at David Lewis and the show I had at the Wadsworth Athenaeum, I increased my scale like fivefold.
Okay. So I have to say this so everyone understands. When he says fivefold, he's talking about a 30-foot piece. So, and unfortunately, we had a little issue, so that's why we're not seeing that. But let's talk about how you compose a piece like that. Like, what does that look like in the studio with your body then, too?
It's interesting. You cannot take the piece in one gulp, in one view. You must walk to see it. It's a 30 feet piece comprised of 14 images. And they're all, of course, magnificent because I'm an old school photographer. I mean, each photo has to be smoking hot because that's how I was trained, you know? And so, and that to me is what makes a great experience where, oh my gosh, there's like, how much butter? More butter. How much cream? More cream. If you know what I mean, to really have a rich and full experience. But it's a rich and full experience in what's called a liminal space, a space in between, a liminal space. So you're always floating. As you walk around, you'll see an oil painting, a photograph that I took at the Stieglitz Museum in Amsterdam. And it's the first oil painting of a black man that's not in a servant position. He's in an honorable position. So I took that. And then next to that person is something else. And I'm shifting, there's time shifts, there's the cosmos, there's Africa, there's European gardens, there's all this stuff going on. But as you walk, you're being exposed to different things and you stop. And if you look back, it's about 8 inches in relief. So some things are being obscured and you have to come back. So you have to hold that photograph, that piece of work in your head. And so you're very active. You become a very active viewer in doing it. Have I slid across? Oh, so how did I make it? COVID made me do it. COVID made me do it. I was just locked in my studio, in my home, and with nothing. And then the Wadsworth show got pushed back. And so it's just by doing it. And then I have 40-foot wall in my, that's what determined it. And oddly enough, my Guggenheim, they had you write, what would you do, or how would this help you in the future? I had wrote that, and I had no idea until I just looked at my Guggenheim paper because I just applied for another grant for something else and I wanted to review. And it said, I want to make a work that cannot be contained in the eye. I want to make a work that interferes, disrupts the architecture, and I even made this thing that's 25 feet or more. I had forgotten about, little did I know, I had conceived this work 5 years ago or 4 years ago. And it just came to life. That was sort of shocking. Like, damn, this is what I told the Guggenheim I was going to do, and I did it. So.
Well, you're a man of your word, right?
Even when I forget my word.
Okay.
Oh, I guess that's the best kind.
Yes, it is.
Oh, self-congratulatory. Thank you.
Okay. So we've talked a little bit about this. We've gone to the continent a little bit as far as Africa, but you spend your time between Ghana and LA. And so I think we need to talk a little bit about how that influences the work and impacts the work. And so I wonder if your sense of place impacts the work when you're composing.
Oh, absolutely.
Okay.
I'll make this real brief. My first introduction to Ghana was in 1992 when Stevie Wonder took me there to shoot his album cover, which the name of which I forget. But he kept telling me, Todd, you're Ghanaian, because we have no idea where we're from, but there's a really good chance that we're from this place because it's a straight shot, right across the Atlantic. Okay, then fast forward, I go there because Deb Willis at NYU opens up a satellite campus in Accra, and for their opening celebration, they have a photo show, and I'm invited to go, and I rediscovered Ghana. Found a beach that had nice waves. I used to surf when I was a teenager. Used to surf and drop a lot of acid when I was a teenager. So then I had brought my my board, my belly board or whatever you call it, and with fins because I don't stand up. So, and I found this great place with waves. I call my wife. She goes, "Don't do anything. Come home. I think you're crazy." So 6 months later, she comes. She loves it, and we buy 3 acres on the beach, and we build. And when I'm there, I can see this place in a different light. I can see myself. There's something like geographic distance gives you a critical distance. And that's when I also wanted to think to embrace my ancestors, to embrace my grigri, to embrace neck down, to really question my thinking, because my thinking was formulated by Catholicism. I was an altar boy, and by the hegemony of Western culture. And so my college education, who I read, everything. And I thought, wait a second, I need to sort of reconnect with this place, and how could that make its way in the work? I didn't know that it would be I couldn't imagine that it would be here, but many of the photographs of the African landscape and some of the portraits you see there were taken over 10 years ago, 15 years ago, because I just go back into my archive. There's something called the Pictures Generation, which was a group of photographers, Sherry Levine, Jim Welling, and on and on and on. And they would actually, what is it called when you take a photograph that someone else has taken and then you use it for yourself? Appropriate. And that's this whole idea of appropriation came about. Well, I think I'm from that same generation. And I studied with John Baldessari, who was one of the key professors that provided that platform for that to occur. And so what I think I'm doing is I'm appropriating my own archive. So every photograph that you've seen in there, I took. Every photograph. The only one I didn't take, we paid for, and that was the Hubble spacecraft. We pay for those pictures of galaxies and so forth. So I'm claiming, yeah, my 0.01 penny that I chipped in for that, paid for that. So it's, I'm very proud of that, because we're in a time where everything is like pasted and quick, and that we forget the past. And I think it's really, really, you must be cognizant of the past. Otherwise, you keep reproducing it. You keep bringing the past into the present if you aren't clear about the past.
That's right. So I know we're wrapping up, and I know that there are probably some questions for us. My thought about it is, what else is happening in your home in Ghana? I think I either heard this or read this, that you're building. Are you building a school still?
Yes.
Oh goodness. Did I step on a sore subject?
We have two families that take care of the place while we're gone, and we have opened it up to a residency. Contura Davis has been there. April Banks, another artist, is coming there in another week or so. In any event, one artist that was there gave planted a seed in one of our carpenter, and who takes care of the property, that they should build a school. And so he kind of thought it was from me and my wife that they should build a school. And so he started laying the foundation, and then she came back, put on Facebook, we're building a school in Africa, and got $5,000 in like 2 days, just on Facebook, and then sent it, unbeknownst to me. And then I get a text, like, oh, we need more money, Todd. I go, money for what? For the school. What school? And so this was something I wish I was so altruistic. This is something, so now it started, and I figure, okay, I've been called upon to build a school. You know, at some point you go, okay, I give in. This is, you're telling me. So we're almost complete. Now I need to find instructors. But what I do is, for the residency, every artist that comes, they have to actually do a community project that gets people on the property, utilizes a little bit of the school that's in, so we can start using it. But everyone goes, oh, Mr. Todd, you're building a school, we're so happy. Yes, I'm building a school. So I'm all for it now, because obviously I've been told, build a school.
Okay. So what kind of school is this? What kind of school? Now I want to know, because
I'm thinking that it's going to be actually the first step is to learn English, because what I've been talking to people, that is one of the greatest tools and assets that you can have at this point. So that you not only know your local tribal tongue, but there's really a ceiling that you hit if you don't speak English. So there's that. And the second thing would be some drawing, some visual literacy to open that up. Because also I don't want to be a school that's recognized by the government, because then I'd have to enter all that bureaucracy. So I want it to be free English classes on the weekends, things like that.
Sense. I appreciate that. Because I hadn't heard all the details. I'd heard a little bit about it on the margins.
Yeah, so. I am not that nice a man.
I beg to differ. I've enjoyed you immensely. I think maybe we have some questions, and I will get those from the audience, and then maybe we can go for it from there. Yes. 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 if anyone has any questions, would you please hold them up? And then I think we also have someone monitoring
And maybe I'll
questions.
tell you something really quickly.
Okay.
I befriended a great artist that comes from the great state of Michigan.
Oh, thank you.
His name is Mike Kelly. Mike Kelly, one of your great, great, great artists. He was a grad student when I was an undergrad student at Cal Arts. And John Baldessari, I was supposed to meet John Baldessari for a studio visit, and I went to Mike Kelly's studio to find John. And then later, after John left, I was talking to Mike, and I said, you know, I said, where are you from? And he goes, oh, I'm from Michigan. I said, oh, I used to live in a house with a guy from Michigan. He's from Lansing. And he goes, oh no, Ann Arbor. And he goes, what's his name? And I said, his name's Jim Osterberg. And he knew who Jim Osterberg was. And I said, oh, and he goes, you used to live with Jim Osterberg? Oh, yeah, we shared a house in Laurel Canyon. Jim Osterberg's stage name is Iggy Pop. So after that, Mike Kelly was way cool with me. And yeah, so I'll leave it there.
Okay. You know, someone came up with a question, and I realized that we did not talk about this, so this is good. And asked, can you talk about how you came to use the frames in your work?
Ah,
I can't believe we.
yeah, perfect. There's a theorist called Bachelard, and one of his great works is, oh gosh, space. I just went. Okay, just anyway. The poetics of space. The poetics of, thank you, brain. The poetics of space. Thank you, Euclid. Okay, the poetics of space. Poetics of space. And the treatise of poetics of space is basically that everything has a memory in your home. So your cupboard that's witnessed all these vibrations and everything, it's charged. So I thought, oh, why don't I use frames that were in Black homes, frames that were in people of color's homes. And so I go to garage sales and Goodwill's places in South LA, because it's all going to be people of color. And also to really mess with the white cube. So and also mess with this idea of taste and class. So instead of these really pristine, I used these funky frames. That was the first wave. Then the museum people started hearing that, oh, Todd Gray, so I got frames from works that were de-accessed. And so now I'm getting museum frames. Then when I decided to ramp up, you know, it's hard to find those big frames. A collector who knows my work said, I just saw this garage sale in Beverly Hills. Get there immediately. You're just gonna go crazy. So all of those ornate frames were from one person's home in Beverly Hills who just had an estate sale. I went in there, I went, brum, 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 brum. And got every one. So that's where those gold, and if you notice in the gold leaf frames and stuff like that, that's where I put the Africans. And the European, those great works, that's where I put just the nondescript brown wood. So sort of shift the semiotic.
Okay. Thank you for that answer.
Oh, and Soweto, I've gotten frames, and Johannesburg too. So, and Paris.
Okay.
And now Kalamazoo.
That's right. You're going to take a little piece of Kalamazoo back with you.
I am. A beautiful oval frame.
Too, maybe?
I took a couple snaps. They may make it into my next iteration of work.
Your archive. Okay, I didn't ask this, but I'm going to ask, do you know how many images are in your archive?
A zillion.
A zillion. Oh, gosh.
I've been making work. Well, I wouldn't call it making work, but I mean, look, I've worked for a zillion magazines. I've shot over 100 album covers. Sorry, that's why I say a zillion. I mean, all I've done, I've been a commercial photographer nonstop since I was 15. Was the first time I got paid. And then it wasn't until I went to the academy, until I became a professor, when I said, oh, after I shot Eazy-E and he brought a shotgun to my studio, that's when I said, okay, I'm too old for this. And I used my MFA to get a teaching job, and I was fortunate enough to get a tenure track and awarded tenure.
Okay. Why don't most of your figures have eyes?
That's the whole thing, to obscure you, to draw you in, to create mystery, create a question mark. Okay, simply put, most photographs make a statement, exclamation point, spectacle. Me, question mark. All my photographs All my works, I try to make a question mark. So the onus is on you to complete it. So that's my strategy. To photographs that obscure, photographs that make questions, not give answers.
Kind of interesting. It's there's a term that we art historians use called relational aesthetics. And normally that's really about you know, it isn't necessarily tied to photography. This idea of an exchange between the viewer and the artist that happens very actively, right? So that's really interesting that you said that.
Well, I do want the viewer to be very cognizant that they are making the meaning. And so I want them to know that meaning is a construct. Meaning is not a given. Meaning is a construct that we all make. So reality is not this room. Reality is what we perceive this room to be. And there are what, maybe 40 people? There's 40 perceptions of reality in this room and not one is correct. It's all dynamic and it's always moving. However, media and hegemony wants to put out one form of reality, and that form is normativity, and that form is correct, and that's where you have the winners, the losers, and so forth. But even winners and losers, if you go a bit deeper in, wow, there's a lot of reasons why things happen. But that cut, okay, I'm going too far down the rabbit hole, but I hope you're kind of digging what I'm saying. Okay.
No, and I think you went back to the grigri when you started to talk, right? Where you're talking about this is why you have to kind of go deeper inside, not so much in your head. Go below the neck. Right?
Yes.
Ooh, this is a good one.
Then I'm not answering it.
Okay. Had you grown up in a Midwest town like Kalamazoo instead of LA, how do you imagine your path would differ?
Okay. I grew up running from the Blackstone Rangers in Chicago. My parents sent us to Chicago. You all know who Blackstone Rangers are? Okay, you've heard of the Crips and the Bloods and all this stuff. Okay, back in the 60s, there was a gang called the Blackstone Rangers, and they operated in Chicago. My parents are from Chicago. They got away from there. Why? Because my mother was Lutheran, my father was Baptist. They were getting so much pressure to bring us Lutheran, Baptist. We're gonna bring them up Catholic. Nobody's gonna be happy. And we're moving out of Chicago to LA. So that's why I was brought up Catholic, and I went to all Jewish schools. So all in the Fairfax district. Oh, kekafen napisham. With love. So for those who know what that means. So what I did was this stew of cultures, and now I've already drifted from your question. You'll have to give it to me again. Yeah, 67 is hard, baby.
Oh, no. It says, had you grown up in a Midwest town like Kalamazoo?
So Chicago. So every summer they would send us to Chicago so they could have peace and quiet and maybe, anytime they wanted. So, but my grandmother, was there, and so I learned how to play Mobley Peg. I know games. I discovered what an alley was and how life in the alley happens in Chicago. But so I made 5 trips to the Midwest. How might I differ? A, I would not have had the exposure to the record companies that I did in Hollywood, and it wouldn't have been just right down, just seems normal. I don't think I would have had I would have been so infatuated with celebrity culture, but I'm in the middle of it, and it's normal. Oh, that's another thing. Michael Jackson, the Stones, Robert Plant, they're just people. They're just other people in Hollywood. And I think that was because with Michael, I'm talking to him, but I thought, man, I'm smarter than you. I have I have an undergrad degree I've read Foucault. I've read Derrida. I didn't say any of that. But I'm thinking that's why I'm not so impressed. And that's why I can just see you as a human being. So I don't care what uber celebrity I meet, you're a human being. And I'm probably smarter than you. I'm joking.
Okay, I have 2 more questions from the audience.
I'm just having fun.
Can you tell that how much fun he is? I think you can. Okay. This is about one of your works in the show that's here. And it's actually asking us for you to talk more about love and happiness. Al Green.
Love and happiness. Yeah, definitely Al Green. That is the first work I made that I'm drawing from a different psycho-emotional palette. Most of that I'm talking about is I'm criticizing Western hegemony, I'm criticizing colonialism, I'm criticizing that horrible history that reduces an individual to a thing. And I didn't trust that photo, making that, because I said, ooh, it's too sweet. I'm not about sweet, I'm about hitting hard, and so forth. And it's so gentle. And then I got back to think, but Todd, don't you want to access a full range of ideas and palettes? So since Love and Happiness, I've made 3 other works that actually engage the heart. Clearly engage the heart. It is hard to engage the heart for me. It's much easier to punch. The heart requires for me a lot, because I consciously, after that one and after I gave up, and I go, no, this is a good work, and it's nurturing. So I used a picture of a child. Oh, you saw it in the case where there's that kid looking. Anyway, if you go look in the vitrine, there's a photograph of a child looking back. For me, children are verboten pictures of children because they're easy. And when I was a photo instructor or professor, I said to the class first day, no pictures of children, girlfriends, or pets. So that's it, because it's just, oh, an animal, oh, so cool. And I didn't want mine to operate, because to me, that's a cheap emotive shot. So that's but Love and Happy, now I've made a few, and I'm really happy that I can actually access those parts of myself, or have you access it when you look at it. Because hopefully it opens up, there's a sweetness to that. And the beauty of just those legs, and then the garden, and with that lovely gold frame that I got in Paris.
There's a level of vulnerability there, right?
Yeah.
This is really, really something that you see the intimacy.
The intimacy.
Okay.
And for me,
yes,
it's being mistaken as a softie. Not a softie in a masculine way, but not like, hard edge painters, minimalists, that type of serious artists. I'm thinking, oh, maybe they'll think, I'm not so serious, because look, I'm talking about the heart. But damn, now I really realize I have absorbed too much of the culture. Yes, you can talk about the heart, and you can evoke that and be as critical and still be making art, And I'll stop right there, and thank you for coming.
Really?
Okay, bye.
Okay. Okay, you brought us right back to grigri again. You said hearts, but I'm going to close out, and I have 2 questions, and then I'm going to close out. And one is for young people, right? It says, do you have advice for young people trying to get into music photography? I think you talked a little bit about it when you were talking about how you got into it. Maybe it's, try and just get in there and get there
don't
early.
give up. My advice to whatever you're following is, don't give up. Be like the water on the rock. Drip, 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 drip. Look, my biggest job, the Rolling Stones, it's because I did not give up. And you're going to say this, it's like not Oprah Winfrey woo-woo, but every night before I finally got that, I imagined myself on stage shooting the Rolling Stones. And one of my images was in Life magazine. So at 17, I was published in Life magazine with a picture of Mick Jagger. And I had no concept of that. And plus, for the last concert, I want to tell you, before I was in the pit, the last one, there was a photographer assigned by Life. His name was Marshall, what's his name? Okay, it doesn't matter. He never showed his pictures. We actually developed our color pictures in the sync, our slides, and showed management the next day at the hotel. And The editors of Life said, we want these two guys on stage because we want to make certain we get good photographs. And so for the last show in San Diego, we were on stage. I mean, Keith Richards is right there, and I'm walking around the stage, and here I am, a 17-year-old on the stage shooting. And I'll tell you something, I thought that was the peak. Here I'm 17 going, well, I don't know what's going to happen the rest of my life because I've just maxed it out.
Maxed out at 17.
Yeah, maxed out at 17. Oh gosh.
Oh man, I mean, but what
Oh,
you're
but I
saying is true.
persisted.
Persistence.
That's what persistence, and imagine it. Every night before I went to bed, I imagined that, and I felt that rush of, oh man, that's so cool, that's so cool. So it wasn't like, oh, I didn't get it. It was like, oh, that's so cool, that's so cool. So I raised my vibration to positivity. Stay positive and stay focused, and eventually it will come. But you have to sustain that positivity. You have to sustain that persistence. And I don't care where we are in life's journey. I mean, with all due respect, but sustain that.
And that's really applicable to any artist, really. It's just,
it's a long road.
Yes.
It's a long road.
So someone online wants to know if you have more appreciation for blues and jazz.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Oh, yes. I can hear it, and I'm like, now I like the original Mississippi Delta better than the Led Zeppelin covers.
Even today, our executive director, Belinda Tate, she said that she hears different sounds in relationship to all of your work, which I thought was really very beautiful. Yeah. Right? Yes. Well, I think that concludes our evening. I want to just thank you so much, Todd. Thank you.
Oh, pleasure.